In this lesson, we're going to take a look at something which I've heard best described as musical punctuation. Now, the way the analogy works is that if the notes that you play are the letters that make up words, then this would be the grammar that controls how the sequence flows. So this is things like timing, how long or short the notes are, and whether those notes are joined together or have gaps in between them. This is important because quite often the way you play the notes is as important to the character of the music as the choice of notes themselves. Now I'm going to teach you this in an extremely simple way. We're going to play the melody of Three Blind Mice, which might seem a little bit silly, but it's just so simple that you can focus on all the right details and get the techniques ready to throw into your playing. As ever, you can download guitar tabs for all the technique exercises in this series, as well as the rest of the course materials from my Patreon page via the link in the description. You'll also find a link to the full series playlist there as well. But without further ado, let's dive into the masterpiece that is Three Blind Mice. So extremely simple, I'm going to do this on the G string, but it doesn't really matter what string you do it on, but I'm going to start on G string for now. It's going to be third finger playing the 4th fret, first finger playing the 2nd fret, and then just the open string. And there you have your Three Blind Mice. Now the first thing we're going to discuss is playing this bit of music using a legato sound. Now legato means that all the notes flow smoothly into each other, so it sounds like this. And not like this. Hopefully you can hear in that second example that there were gaps between each of the notes. Now there are a few reasons why you might be getting unwanted gaps in your playing. The first one is lifting up the fretting finger too early. So watch what happens with my third finger here. If I play the note, then lift it up ever so slightly, the note's going to disappear because I'm not fretting the string anymore. So you have to look really closely because it's only a tiny movement. But you can just see my finger lifting up ever so slightly before playing the next note, and same with that first finger before playing the open string. Whereas if I want to play legato, I have to time it perfectly so that the finger lifts up exactly as I pick the string. The other thing that sometimes goes wrong is resting the pick on the string before you pick it. So I'm going to show you a little angle of this so you can see exactly what I mean. I think this comes from a place of insecurity where the player isn't quite sure that they're going to hit the right string, so they just want to rest the pick on it to make sure that they're going to be getting their picking accuracy in the right place. But you should try and be able to pick the string without having to rest on it first and check exactly where it is. That'll also build a bit of muscle memory for the string placement. So ultimately you've got three things to synchronize here, because you've got to synchronize the picking of the string with the lifting of the finger, with the pressing of the finger of the next note if you're not holding that fret down already. So as I play this melody, I'm picking the string, then the next time I pick, exactly as I pick, the third finger is going to lift up and the first finger is going to go down. Then exactly as I pick again, the first finger is going to come off. So all the notes flow nicely into each other. Now this is also a little bit of an ear training exercise because you want to train yourself to hear whether there are any gaps or not. The gaps might be very slight if you've almost got the technique, but you want to be able to identify any pause between the notes and then be able to analyze your own technique, work out what's causing those gaps and try and amend it. Now on the other end of the spectrum, you also want to practice purposefully creating these gaps so that you can choose whether the notes are legato or not. So if we put this in the example of the Three Blind Mice, rather than having three blind mice, it would turn into Three Blind Mice. Or on guitar, rather than, it would become. As I mentioned, quite often the gaps in between notes are as important as the notes themselves in riffs and melodies, so it's important to be in control of this while you're playing. Now the technique for the fretted note is to reduce the pressure from the finger ever so slightly so that the note is no longer fretted, but the finger is still resting on the string and muting it like this. So you can see it's minimal movement and I'm just lifting up the finger ever so slightly. If I lift the finger off the fretboard, chances are I'm going to get some open string noise. So to avoid that, you want to practice just moving the finger up ever so slightly but still feeling the contact with the string. That'll work for the third and the first finger. But then when you move to the open string, obviously we haven't got any fingers on the string anymore, so the two options you've got to mute this one are either to rest the left hand over the strings just lightly to mute them all, or you can use the side of the palm of your right hand as well. Either will work. But that's what you're aiming for. Just nice even gaps in between each of the notes. It might be worth going between these two techniques just so you can practice having ultimate control over them. So start with the legato version. Then try and put the gaps in. And then the more you can do it without having to think too hard about the technique, the better. And when you're listening to songs or parts to try and learn them, make sure you pay attention to these details so you can pick up on them and emulate them in your own playing. Another technique I want to touch on in this video is vibrato. Now most people probably associate vibrato with like a vocal thing. Imagine the big warbly notes that opera singers sing. That would be the sound of vibrato, where you can hear the note moving up and down a little bit. You can also do this on guitar and other instruments though, and it just adds a little bit of movement and character to your sustained notes. So just to give you an example, here is a note with absolutely no vibrato at all. And here is the same note with some vibrato. So you can just hear that extra little bit of movement, and sometimes it can sound a little bit mundane and awkward without it, so it's definitely worth trying to put into your playing. Now just to be completely honest with you, vibrato is one of the areas I find a little bit difficult to teach because it's one of them things that came completely naturally to me. I never had to really work on it, and when I'm playing I never really think about it, it just kind of comes out on its own. But the advice I would give you is to watch a lot of guitar playing. I remember when I was learning I used to watch a lot of guitar playing on YouTube, and I think just by visualizing and absorbing the movements and the technique, that'll help you apply the right technique to your own playing as well. However, I am going to try and kind of dissect my technique a bit so I can give you a few tips and tricks on how to get started. The first thing I would say is that you want to be holding the neck quite loosely, and most of the movement should come from your forearm and your wrist rather than your hand. If I just perform a little bit of vibrato, there's quite a lot of movement. You should find that the neck starts moving up and down as well. Probably if the neck isn't moving as well as the arm, you might be holding it a little bit too tightly, and it might start to feel more like miniature bends, like this kind of thing, which doesn't quite have the right sound. You want it to be nice and loose and kind of free flowing, and it almost works out as the string movement is like a residual effect of the arm movement. So that's my best advice, is just to keep nice and relaxed with it. To help you get used to it when you're practicing, I want you to try doing vibrato with your first, second and third fingers separately. So here's the first finger on the 5th fret G, second finger on the 6th fret, and third finger on the 7th fret. Feels slightly different under all the fingers, but you'll likely have to use each one in different circumstances when you're learning songs, so definitely worth practicing with all of them. And once you're a bit more comfortable with this technique, you might also want to try different speeds of vibrato. So you can have very quick vibrato, or you can have like a nice, slow, gentle vibrato. You know, it depends what kind of music you're playing. If you're playing like a slow ballad, the slow vibrato is probably going to suit it a little bit better. So it's worth practicing different types and getting used to them, and then just employing whatever vibrato seems appropriate for the song you're trying to learn. So I hope this lesson will enable you to pick up and play guitar parts with a bit more detail and better emulate the song that you're trying to play. Now you should find that once you've started experimenting with these concepts, they should occur naturally in your playing, and you'll be able to pull them off without even really thinking about them. Now that will work a lot better if you listen really closely to the source material, and in the next series we're going to learn a bunch of riffs and lead guitar parts, so that's a great way to put this into practice. As I mentioned, you can download guitar tabs for all the technique exercises in this series, as well as the rest of the course materials from my Patreon page via the link in the description. All the lessons are nice and organised on my YouTube channel page, so feel free to subscribe if you want to follow along. And in the next lesson, we're going to start taking a look at picking technique, so I'll see you in that one.